Do my teal and orange nightmare. Yeah. Okay, let's see what we did here. So one thing I did notice last night, actually I noticed it when I was doing it in the afternoon, and I kind of remembered putting this in the wrong place. So the second grid here. Oh no, actually I made it a whole separate grid, didn't I? Okay, yeah, so I didn't have to do that. Never mind, I didn't do it wrong. What I kind of intended to do was just kind of put this inside the same grid, but it's fine this way too. I was going to just put this div right before the closing tag of the first one, but doing a whole separate grid is fine too. So yeah, there's no problem there. So yeah, markup wise, what I did here is just inside my H1, I have small around Michael here, and then Baywatch. And then I have this div class banner with the image inside it. And with images, you always need the alt attribute for accessibility's sake. And basically, that's what will appear if the image cannot appear for one reason or another. Either it didn't load, or for folks using assistive technology like screen readers, that's going to appear in place of the image. So if that image actually contains useful information, like heaven forbid you should have text as an image, don't do that. But if you do have an image that if someone can't see the image for whatever reason, you need to get the same information across somehow, use the alt attribute for that. If it's a purely decorative picture, then you can just say alt equals empty string, but it should always be there. Like in this case, it doesn't actually add any additional information, right? We already have Michael Baywatch right next to it in real text. So I don't really need something that appears here if we can't see his beautiful mug. So I added quite a bit of CSS that I don't necessarily need to go over in excruciating detail, but I can go over it in a little detail. So Google Fonts. Yeah, I don't need nearly all these. I only ended up using Bungee, I think. So I'll show you how to use Google Fonts here in a moment. So I pulled in a font. To get a full-size background like this, let's add a bunch of stuff to the page. Oh, we're getting there. So see, it stays in place no matter how big my browser window is. It scales with it, right? So we use this background is shorthand for a bunch of separate background properties. Background image, background-image would be this. So splode.jpg. No repeat, that would be the background repeat property if we did them separately. Background position, center. And then fixed means it's going to stay in place as I scroll. And to ensure that it is full size no matter what, and we're going to use the relatively new background size property that is now pretty well supported. Background size cover will make it work just like this. Before, there were a lot of little hacks you had to put in for this. And if you are curious about what browsers support a given property, there's a really nice website, caniuse.com. Can I use background size? Looks like yeah. Looks like that works. So I see which versions supported it in each of these things. So it's worked in Chrome practically forever. That kind of stuff. So that's nice. And actually one of the Visual Studio Code extensions that I have on the tools page, which if you guys haven't done that, please do it. There's a plugin for this. So you can use, can I use straight from the editor, which is super handy. I think if I hover over this, oh yeah. Notice when I hover over this, it says Edge, Firefox 4, Safari 4.1, Chrome, IE9, Opera 8.10. So it tells me the earliest version of each browser that supported this property. So that's a really handy thing to have inside your editor. Don't even have to go out to the website. So you put that on the actual HTML element itself. So the body, turns out Foundation wants to make the background white. So I override that and make it transparent so that this shows through. And then I put a one rim padding at the very top of the body, just so Michael's head wasn't right up against the edge. Then I have my H1, and yeah, I went a little overboard on the H1 here. So float is interesting. If I didn't have that there, oops. It would be on the left, and it would push this down. I don't want it to push that down. So since this is yeah. So I float it to the right. And it doesn't do that. So if you happened to struggle with the how do I get my buttons not to be on a separate line from my text or something, I don't know if anyone wrote those in such a way that that was a problem, but floating it to the right would be one way you could fix that. You could float the buttons to the right. Put a little margin on the top. And actually this is the trick I'm using to make his hand line up perfectly with the border here. The font family, the one that I brought in from Google. And then this text shadow. So it's dumb, but if we want to see how text shadow works, let's just Google text shadow, which I'm going to do mostly so I can tell you about the very fine website CSS tricks. I see the fourth result down is text shadow and CSS tricks. They have a CSS almanac there that covers every single property, and their examples tend to be really, really good. So here are the values you put in there. First, the X coordinate, so kind of an offset, and then the Y coordinate, then the blur radius, and then the color of the shadow. And you can have multiple text shadows just by separating them with a comma. And I put them on a new line, and they put them on a new line too because it's more readable, but you can just put them one after another on the same line too if you want to. So yeah, we layered lots of white shadows, glows really on top of each other, and some light teal, and then some dark teal, because why not? Makes it pop. And then inside the H1, I had Michael here with a small element around it. And I believe the default style for that, which may have been a foundation thing, was 80%. I wanted it to be a little smaller than that, 60%. And I made it white smoke color. And I didn't want the glow around it. It's still part of the H1, so it would have been there otherwise. So now it's like that. And then the banner, I put absolute positioning on it. So position absolute is, yeah, I'm not going to go into excruciating detail. If I didn't do that, see, it's not doing what I wanted. Because what it did, you'll notice, is the form starts after his fingers end. I want it to overlap it. So if by positioning it, by using CSS positioning, that takes it out of the flow of the document. So its position no longer affects anything else on the page. Like nothing else is going to move because it's taking up space. It effectively doesn't take up space anymore. So the only reason it's even down as far as it is because of the rest of the H1 being a certain height, right? So his position no longer affects anything else. The other thing with positioning is ordinarily when you use that, you would probably say top right, bottom, or left and say how it's positioned relative to whatever it's relative to. So left, 0, would move it over there. Top, 0, move it up there. Top, -30, did something funny. So the same as 30, since it's the whole page. So anyway, I didn't want to actually specify any kind of offset. I just wanted it to be taken out of the flow of the page. So it's where it might be otherwise. It's basically starting at the beginning of its parent, the H1. But by using positioning at all, that takes it out of the flow of the document, so it doesn't affect anything else anymore. Totally worth it. Oh yeah, and I specify the height of the banner image. And I did do it in pixels. Which, still, nice thing about browsers and the way they handle pixels has a value. If you zoom in, whoops, not zoom into the console. If you zoom in, they do still grow. Because this is original size here. So I was already zoomed in quite a bit. It is an extremely high resolution image. Yeah. Still looking pristine. Yep, so I'll commit all this silliness. Add appropriate theming. Theming? Looks like a word. I mean, it's a word. Is that? Yeah, yep. Just looks wrong. Psyching myself out. Beautiful. So that does mean now these images are up on my up on GitHub if you want them. I can also drop them in Slack real quick. Yeah.
Where did you take care of the kind of bobbing effect when you scroll all the way back up or scroll all the way down?
That? Well, Chrome's just doing that. Yeah. It might be a Mac specific thing. I'm not sure. Probably. Apple loves to do the boingy scrolling. Cool.